See, we have some new faces in the room, so I guess we'll go through the welcome and introductions. I'm Tom Hermanson, Chair, and with Ocean Partners Hospitality.
Good morning. I'm Andrea Young, Deputy Mayor of the City of West Melbourne.
Keith Winston, Brevard Zoo.
Giles Malone, Space Coast Daily.
Justin Karen, County Attorney's Office.
Julie Braga, residence in Melbourne.
Rita Pritchett, North Brevard.
Peter Krantz with the Space Coast Office of Tourism.
Candace Normore with the Tourism Office.
Deborah with the Tourism Office. Darby Kohler, WSPH. Verizon is Gator 90.5 Radio.
Bob Bacher, Cocoa Beach Surf Company.
Suzette Ayers, the District Court Commission Office. Allison Malone, Space Station.
That's good.
John, University of Florida, class of 98.
Max, County Attorney's Office.
Ben, also County Assistant.
Welcome, everybody. And on the phone, we have Christy Galzerano, Michelle Martindale, Council Member Larry Jarnes. Are there any other attendees on Zoom?
Bonnie King.
Bonnie King. Okay, welcome. We need a motion by the committee to allow Mr. Jarnes to vote by Zoom,
So moved.
and Christy Galzerano.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Malone,
Second.
second by Keith Winston. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none,
Aye.
motion passes. So, it's my meeting, so I'll give it a little justification for having it. We heard at length, I think we gave them all the time in the world, from Driftwood to present their proposal at the last meeting. We discussed it. I felt at the time, I counted, there was almost unanimous agreement on this board that while a impressive project, it did not rise to the level of justifying a $30 million a year tax rebate. We had a motion on the table to pass that forward to the county commission, and it wasn't passed. I then went to the county commission meeting the following night, and it was relatively apparent that a majority of the commissioners at that time were supportive of this project. Looking at the agenda, since we didn't have a July meeting and expecting that this probably would come before the county commission in July, it concerned me very much that a proposal of this magnitude may actually be voted on by the county commission without input from this advisory board. State law statute says in 125-0104, number 4E, the governing board of the county which levies and imposing the tourist development tax shall appoint an advisory council of 9 members, and further, they shall make recommendations to the county governing board of the effective operation of special projects and for the uses of the tourist development tax. So I think that it would be our fiduciary responsibility and our assigned responsibility to advise the county commission on all projects, big and small, and especially something of this size. This proposal is for the use of a private party of $30 million over 30 years. And at the very least, we should give them our opinion. Now, as I say often, and will say again, we're an advisory board to the county commission, and they can take our advice or not. But at the very least, we should pass it on. I think everybody's in agreement that the Driftwood proposal is a good one. It's a great one for the county. It absolutely is economic development, and it will be an impressive project if and when it is constructed. It's out with the old and in with the new. There's nobody that knows better the impact that the International Palms has on the lodging market in Cocoa Beach. But what qualifies this private development for such an extraordinarily large grant of funds? From the last meeting, I didn't see a single member of this advisory board that was in agreement that a grant of that magnitude was justified. And in the 4 weeks since that meeting, as chair and as a Cocoa Beach hotelier, I've probably fielded dozens of calls and had as many conversations with people, and it remains a head scratcher. I haven't heard a single person in the community, bar a few in Cocoa Beach, that are supportive of the proposal in its current state. So based on my informal polling, everybody seems to be in the same position with respect to the size of the grant, the duration of the grant, and who it's going to. We all received a letter last night from Mr. Rodriguez. I assume everybody read it. And I'd like to address some of his questions, since they addressed the issues that we raised at our last meeting. Are they creating a new market? I'll concede that we don't have a convention business here like the other cities, major metropolitan areas that he mentioned in the letter, and that it's a valid point if they were building a convention center. And I've said it before, and it bears repeating. They are not building a convention center. They are building a very nice, very sophisticated, very upscale hotel with ballroom space. That's maybe larger than you would otherwise build for a Westin of this size, but this is ballroom space and backroom F&B areas commensurate in size with a hotel of this grandeur. It's not a convention business. We're not going to be pulling National Home Builders convention from the Orlando Convention Center or Atlanta. Wyndham isn't going to have their annual owners retreat, from Las Vegas in Cocoa Beach. So that argument that they're competing with these major metropolitan areas and major convention centers is false. Are they generating new tax dollars? Yes, they're generating new tax dollars. Big or small, every lodging facility generates both sales and bed taxes. If you take a fallow piece of land and build 2 hotels, you generate new sales taxes, property taxes, and bed taxes. Big or small, every lodging facility generates both. Why should a project of $250 million get $30 million in funds when a project of $100 million gets nothing? That seems a pretty arbitrary point to make with respect to this proposal. They can't get the financing. I'd say, give me a break. I have personally financed new construction with my partners, 5 new hotel constructions, and I've refinanced those hotels as well as other purchases probably 10 times around. Market goes up and down, interest rate goes up and down. If there's risk in the market or risk in the proposal, you get what's called a lower loan to value. In a hot market, it might be a 70% loan to value. In a not great market, it may be 60%. And the interest rate also representative of the risk. What they have is not a financing problem. What they have is a capital raising issue. And they need to raise the capital necessary to build their projects in the current market. Driftwood has more access to outside capital than most, with hundreds of investors lining up to invest in their projects. If they can't finance it at 70%, they should be able to finance it at 60%. I know for a fact, hearing it from the principals themselves, that they managed, when they bought the Hilton, with a single email to raise upwards of $45 million in 24 hours to buy that hotel without financing. That's the kind of players these guys are. They have access to hundreds of investors that are lined up for their projects. And to say that they need $1 million a year from the tax collectors or the residents, shall I say, not tax collectors, but the residents of Brevard County, smacks me as, well, I'll reserve that comment. Not being willing or able to raise enough capital to close their deal is their problem, not one of Brevard County residents or the tourism industry as a whole. This argument really gets me. It won't cost the taxpayers anything because it's new money. That argument is completely false, and we'd be silly to accept it. First of all, every new tourism project brings in new tax funds. This is no different. More importantly, the proposal grant will cost the county more than $30 million because of the economic benefit that the TDC generates for the entire county. Most importantly, and you all are aware of our beach renourishment funding issues chronically. Historically, we've received a 9-to-1 leverage from state and federal governments for our beach renourishment projects. That's $7.5 million of $30 million over 30 years. That'll generate $70 to $80 million over 30 years in beach renourishment funds. And these funds may very well be needed as the threat of climate change and more severe storms face our area. We all know the precarious state of the beach fund. It was in the red in like 6-7 years out, not 18 months ago. $30 million to Driftwood is a loss of more than $100 million or more to the taxpayers over the life of this grant when factoring in the multipliers that the bed tax generates through its marketing, which generates not an individual hotel project, but all tourism businesses in Brevard County: hotels, restaurants, B&Bs, the zoo, all other service establishments. The grant request, this is a 30-year gift to a private developer. Even if we accept all of their arguments as valid, which I personally do not, why would we consider running this grant for 30 years? That's a generation of public support for a private project. It takes 2 to 3 years to stabilize a hotel. When banks underwrite your hotel, you get, a 2-year construction loan and a 3-year stabilization period. They call a mini perm. If you can't get your hotel up and running in 3 years, you probably shouldn't be in the hotel business. Maybe 5 to 7 years if it's an extraordinary large project. They're asking for a subsidy from the public for 30 years. I won't be in the hotel business while they're still taking this handout. I would note the change of ownership provision, and I should have noted earlier, I hear that this agreement that we weren't going to get a chance to review in its final form is still being revised. So we're asked to opine on this extraordinary large gift without even seeing the final document. With respect to the ownership provision, which is in there, I know that Driftwood's business model, because I've seen their prospectus for investment, is to build a hotel, develop, and once it's developed and stabilized, sell 90% of the equity at a considerable markup and retain the management with outsized fees. I think standard in the industry is 3% of gross revenues, and they get their 3% plus another 1 or 2% asset management fees on top of it. They're very good at what they do, and they're very good at making money, both for their investors, but most importantly for their general partner investors. So if there's a change of hand provision in this contract that allows them to retain quote-unquote ownership with only a 10% stake, we should all have issue with it. Personally, I've said it. Dave's quoted me on it. I'm going to say it here on the record. I'm floored that we're considering this proposal. The fact that it's half of what they previously asked for is laughable, because that shouldn't have even been considered for a moment, a $60 million grant. I thought the previous motion that was made by Mr. Malone and seconded and most likely would have passed almost unanimously was more than fair. That's marketing, directed marketing effort toward this project at the tune of $500,000 for 5 to 7 years. The motion was for directed marketing via the TDC. If they've got to have it for their in-house people, so be it. But a 5 to 7 year time frame for them to stabilize this project is more than enough. And that is still a $2.5 to $3.5 million grant use of public funds. I'd be open to hearing that motion again. Secondly, there's been in the press and discussed by the county commission what constitutes a majority of the commission. In my non-legal opinion, I would consider this a change in the use tax. It's been argued that it's just a marketing grant, but $30 million, should it pass a majority of the county commission, I would argue that this is a change in the bed tax. We went through a change in the bed tax in 2018. It requires a majority plus one. Now, we're in the situation with 4 commissioners where it's somewhat hard to tell what a majority plus one is, but I would argue this is a change in the bed tax, and I'd like this board to ask for a written legal opinion from the county attorney's office as to whether or not this constitutes a change in the bed tax and what constitutes a majority plus one. Thank you for your patience in listening to my prepared comment, and with that, I will open it up to the rest of the council for comment.
Thank you, Tom. I thank you for that brilliant analysis. You know, we're very blessed to have folks on the TDC over the years who have been here since the early 80s. This bed tax was a foresight of some really great local leaders back in '86 who petitioned the state to create this bed tax where we could collect this money locally from visitors, and that money would help our beaches, help our zoo, help cultural arts programs. You know, that's what it was designed for and intended for. And I salute those people who put that in effect in the 80s, because we're, you know, benefiting from the fruits of that labor now. I feel kind of looking at this thing from 30,000 feet after myself collecting the tax since '86 and submitting it to the county and those funds being used appropriately, that this is sort of harvest time in Brevard County for our hoteliers and for developers, right? We're one of the hottest locations in Florida, which is one of the hottest locations in the country, maybe in the world, for building hotels right now. And we're blessed to have that harvest time. And that harvest should be going to the zoo, should be going to the beaches, should be going to the cultural arts, to programs that help Brevard County residents, help our visitors as well. So I think I agree with Tom that this goes against that intent of what the bed tax was built for and is now benefiting. This developer is brilliant too. I salute them as well. They've got 15,000 hotel rooms that they've developed around the world, and they're going to make an incredible profit from this property that they very astutely purchased a few years ago. So they are going to make a substantial profit at this property, and they should, because they are developing it. However, we should not be, you know, helping them do that, make additional money from our important bed tax. This property will be developed into a hotel property, whether it's a Westin or whether it's 2 other hotels, and it will make a substantial profit without us giving them any money whatsoever. We don't need to do this corporate welfare for this particular project. It's going to happen. The hotels will be built there, and they'll be wildly successful, especially if these folks do it, because they're very good at what they do. But again, we should not be adding to that profit by doing a motion like this. This is an unprecedented request. No one's ever done anything like this before. People have built hotels like Tom and Mr. Barger and other people across the Space Coast with the sweat of their brows. They've done it. They've risked their money, and they haven't come before this committee and asked for millions of dollars to help them do it. Yes, this is a transformational project. It will help this area greatly, but they are going to make an incredible profit without our help. I hope the County Commission takes the TDC's words to heart. I understand watching the last County Commission meeting last month, there seemed to be a majority in favor of moving forward with this request, which to me left me sort of gobsmacked, to be honest with you. I was surprised that you know, they came with that intent. It seemed at that meeting, I think it was a P&Z meeting, that they were going to move forward and approve this project, which I just, like Tom, I don't understand why they would consider doing that. I hope that the County Commission protects our tax proceeds for the future. 30 years, think about that. 30 years is a long time. We won't be in this business in 30 years, and so we're thinking about future folks having to deal with it. There is a recession coming. Don't know when it's going to be, but it's coming. And so we need to keep our tourism tax monies, save them for the beaches, save them for important things that we need to use in the future, and not get into a situation that we're not sure about, as a recession is coming, just a matter of when. Those are my main thoughts. I got some more probably, but you know, I would like to come with another motion to support them in some fashion, but certainly not 30 years. So I'll leave it like that for now.
I'm going to take a little different tack. Since we have two county commissioners in the room, I'm just going to point out, I think, 4 issues.
Microphone.
Thank you. I'm going to take a little different tack since we have two county commissioners in the room. Just 4 issues for all of you to consider. The first one, and Giles, is precedent. The biggest risk here is if whatever is done for a hotelier, because I think that is a precedent in itself. If we're giving direct aid to a new hotel development, I really believe that precedent has to be clearly defined why. Tom, I think you said it. I think we all agree what is precedent setting here is the quality of the hotel experience. It's not a convention center, but there's something really important about what they're doing. So I would encourage whatever happens that a bar is set that is not easily reached. Otherwise, we will vacuum off all future TDC funds. Second piece is the ownership, and you mentioned that as well, and I think appreciate you pointing out the stickiness of that issue. How do you define ownership? You know, we heard verbally say they're planning to keep the hotel, but what does keep the hotel mean? And I think it would, again, important here in the legal language and the details, what is ownership and what are the penalties for giving up ownership? Do we attach penalties to this? If you end up giving up a percentage of ownership in the first 5 years, do you have to pay the money back? If you give up the ownership in the first 10 years, when's the free and clear? I think that actually keeps them in our county if you want to use that as a leverage point. The third point I had recommended at the last meeting that something similar happen, but control of the TDC funds for marketing remain in the TDC marketing arena. If that's not going to happen, and they talked, I saw a letter last night laid out, you know, an audit every year, which I appreciate. But I do believe there needs to be some approval of the marketing plan for that $1 million every year. That could come through the TDC as well. I don't think it has to be, I mean, I think most of it's qualified, but make sure it's really marketing funds. And the last piece I'd like the county commissioners to consider, and I'm unsure about how to even structure this, is, you know, we heard the leadership talk about their desire to be present in Brevard County. How do we judge that beyond the hotels? Because they are asking for something that's beyond the typical hotel. So is there some piece they need to do in terms of community reinvestment? How are they good community members? And honestly, I don't have an easy answer for how you define that. The only thing I could come up with is, you know, a once-a-year presentation of what they do to help the community. It's not a very high bar, but if we really are forming this with the idea they have a presence here, and I'm just taking this realist, again, everything I read in the paper, things I've seen, there seems to be a desire, and I think we share that desire to encourage this project. But what I want to make sure it's structured very carefully, and that those points are addressed. So that's, you know, that's really just the 4 points I thought are important in any deal that is made here. To make sure that it is serving us correctly. It is a sophisticated group. They're going to do a great job. We want to make sure we do a great job for the people of Brevard County and future tourism income. Thank you.
Going to go around the shoe again?
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful that we have hoteliers right here on the dais with us, or on the at the table with us. I did read the letter. Thank you very much for your comments, Tom. Also, Giles and Keith. As the motion was the last time we had it, the time was considerably reduced from the 30 years they were asking for. I was in complete agreement with that. 30 years is way too long, and $30 million is way too much. And Also, I don't think they should be able to sell this, whatever we come up with, whatever the county commission decides to grant them, if anything at all. It should not be a saleable asset. They should have to retain complete ownership for as long as they are receiving whatever money they're going to receive. It should not be a benefit to help them sell the property. The amount, I don't remember exactly what the last motion was, but I know that we were mostly in favor.
500,000 for 7 years, 3.5 million.
After hearing the comments on the financing and things that you made, which I agree with after when I was reading this on my own, I'm so glad that you brought that to the table. So I think the years are fine. I think that the 5 to 7 years is enough time for them to get the hotel up and running. I still think 500,000 is too much at this point. And again, I don't want any part of that to be a saleable asset. Thank you.
Commissioner Tobias here, so I'm not going to speak a lot. We didn't advertise, so I'm just going to listen and take notes today. Was the hotelers invited, they invited today? It would have been good to have been able to answer somebody else's question. I'm sorry, Bob, how are you? Okay, I was going to do a joke on you right then, but I chose not to. But we have a couple commissioners here, so I'm not going to speak tonight. Today we didn't advertise, but I was just wondering, because it would have been nice if the hotel would have been here to kind of hear you guys get some more back and forth. So I'm guessing they're going to be at the commission meeting. So I'm taking notes right now. And thank you guys for your input. And did you guys get a chance to watch the commission meeting? I asked the commissioners, well, through Frank, to have all us watch the last meeting, just so you know everybody had watched that. And I'm going to ask Frank again. Commissioner Tobias won't have to go back and watch this, but I'm going to ask that they do listen to it. So we're not going into this blind. We're all studying real hard. But I just did want to note that I think we all said at the last meeting, we're still studying it out. And you guys know it's a great project, too, and that's basically what we said. So that's what our job is to not be emotional with this and try to figure out the best we could do for the county. But that's all I'm saying on that today, because I have Commissioner Tobias back there.
Can I, just so that I understand, this is a publicly noticed meeting?
It's not a publicly noticed commission meeting.
Okay,
Two county commissioners.
interesting. Yes, I love him dearly. I know how Kendall works, and I know exactly why he's not here. I won't elaborate on it, but I know that they've been in discussion with the TDC's office. I don't necessarily, nor does anybody else on the board here, directly invite anybody, but obviously this is a public meeting, and they would have been given ample opportunity to speak and address our comments should they have been here. But we did hear from them at length. In fact, they were given the opportunity to address every public comment and every one of our comments at the last meeting. So I'm not sure what else we would have heard other than they're still asking for $30 million over 30 years.
Good conversations last time. So again,
Yeah.
it's interesting to me to hear it go back and forth, because there's two sides of this. And so I'm just telling you, it would have helped me out a little bit more today. But again, I'm listening to your input today, and
I appreciate that.
and you're great people, and I'm going to take everything into consideration. So
Thank you. And yes, we're all concerned. I hope that the takeaway, and eventually I hope that we'll hear emotion here, but I think that the takeaway is that I haven't found, barring a few, and one of them spoke at the last meeting, a person I respect, outside of Driftwood's group. I haven't found a single soul that in this county that understands the need to support a group like this for a generation with $1 million a year. That is, I think, the takeaway. And nothing that Mr. Carlos Rodriguez or Kendall or Mr. Wasserman, hopefully I got that name right, is going to say is going to justify that personally, in my mind, not to speak for anybody else, but that seems to be the consensus on the TDC.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. If Commissioner Tabai is here, and that prevents you from having a healthy discussion with us about this issue, why doesn't Commissioner Tabai just step outside and let's have a healthy discussion? I really want to understand your logic behind, favoring this project. I simply don't understand.
I haven't necessarily said that. My style is I listen to all the news before I make a decision. I haven't shot it down, haven't built it up. I'm just not going to even give my clue right now what I'm going to do at the commission level right now, because it is a big project. And I'm still waiting to hear back from Christie too, what we're looking for right now as far as votes. I'm in a learning phase. I made that real clear last meeting. But you guys, come to the table with what you got, make your recommendation. I did make sure the commission knew what your recommendation was and asked them to go watch it, just so that everything's out in sunshine and we're making the best possible decision for the community by the time we're done. And that's always my goal. And so, Mr. Malone, I'm thankful to hear all your information. And again, I'm still gathering information. And this is a great advisory board, but when it comes to the commission, it's a little bit heavier of a load. So I'm still in learning phase. And that's the truth. I never lie, so.
Julie? Ms. Braga?
Good morning. I'm still in the same position as I was before, that I don't believe this is the intent of the TDT as it was originally instructed, and as a hotelier, based on the information they gave us in their original proposal, I did some rough math, and, they're averaging, based on what I could calculate, an average of $345 average daily rate for their first year at a 65% occupancy. That is incredibly low based on below what the standard is, what the whole entire market has been going. So I think that they're very, very, very conservative in what they're estimating. And just room revenue alone would make it $40 million in their first year at that occupancy and that ADR, which I think is below what they're actually going to achieve. And then ramping up to $60 million a year in room revenue only. That's not conference space, that's not F&B, that's nothing. So the hardest thing for me is I just can't get my head around why they need our $1 million when you're talking about a substantial amount of profit. And that's what private companies do. We make profit. And so my biggest challenge is understanding why we would give $30 million of all of our money. It's all of our money. And that's the biggest thing that they've been saying, that it's their money. And I think that it is the county's money, and all of us contribute to it as hoteliers. We work very hard. We've been through a lot. If you go back the last 30 years, and I've been here almost all of them, and I think I will still be here maybe in 30 years. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'll be blessed. But we've been through, in our hotel industry, anything goes up and down so far. And I've been here, and I've been fortunate to have my career here the whole time. But I opened my hotel in 2008 during the greatest recession in the history of America, and there was no subsidy. There was me beating pavement and trying to educate people as to what a new residence inn was in the market. So I just think that when we're talking from the hotelier's perspective, and that's what we're here for, is to share with the county commission the hotelier's perspective, because we manage and govern these funds, or make recommendations, of course. But I think that's the part that I just can't wrap my head around. And even in the comments, they said there's not going to be competition of a product of this size and magnitude in our market. Well, in the free enterprise market, that means they're going to have a corner on the market. There's not going to be any competition. So now you have a beautiful product that I totally support. I'm excited that it's going to be built, and I think it's going to be built no matter whether we give them this money or not. But then you have a corner on the market that it just doesn't make sense according to the way our county and the way our government is founded. So I have a really hard time with that ethically and against my personal beliefs. I do think it is the right amount of rooms to space ratio. That is an equation that hoteliers use. It is not more meeting room space than the amount of hotel rooms to accommodate it. So we design it so that the amount of people for conferences or meetings, that is the right amount rooms to space ratio. And so I agree with Tom, it's not a convention center, and I know we've discussed that in length. I do believe in precedent, Keith mentioned, that this will open up the box. And if you think you haven't seen it, they will all come from all over the country when these kinds of deals are passed. And I did make a little joke, because I like to joke, but 30 years does sound more like a prison sentence than a marketing grant. And I just cannot wrap my head around why we would do this. Why would we do it longer than ad valorem taxes? Ad valorem taxes have to go before the voters every 10 years, right? Why would we give them a marketing grant that doesn't even require that same kinds of checks and balances by the community? I've been going through this in my mind, trying to figure out why we would do this without any having, in 30 years, everything could be completely different, and not allowing the future county commissioners to determine if this is a good deal, I think it puts them in handcuffs. Like, I think it puts all of us in handcuffs. And I think that there's been some talk about the economic impact, this transformative project, which I think you can make the word transformative a drinking game, but don't do it right now, it's too early. But this transformative project, they already own the land. This is not an economic development issue. This is strictly a handout, in my opinion.
Their marketing materials shows a 30% ROI, I think it was, I quoted at the last meeting, to their investors on the current project. They have a profitable hotel, which they're going to make a lot more profitable.
Yeah, and that's what I think it's being used for. And when we can't see their entire P&L, and it's going to be what they give and provide for an audit, I think is in question, because there's ways, I think that a product of this size and magnitude will already budget for a 4%, 2 to 4% marketing of their total budget. So you're just sliding it to the bottom line. I mean, I just can't see how you, anyway. So I think my main point is why we approve a marketing grant for a hotel that's not even open. And I still, to this day, will believe that this money should remain in the TDC hands, whatever we grant them, whatever gets out. If it's 5 to 7 years, the previous motion for $500,000, I don't see why we have to hand over the cash to the private company when we can designate funds through the TDO office to help market and earmark it specifically for their project. But I just don't, I have a hard time ethically giving them money when they can work with the TDO staff and manage it and help develop that marketing plan. So I think those are I know it was a lot, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been educating myself a lot. And as a hotelier who's been in this industry for almost 25 years, primarily in this county, I am shocked that we're even considering this, because this is not a win for the county. And I think that is the main thing that we need to make that recommendation to the county commission. That's all I have, Chairman.
Very good comments, Ms. Braga. Christy or Larry, would you care to make a comment?
Sure. Good morning, and this is Christy. I would like to start with a prepared statement from the Cocoa Beach Hotel and Lodging Association, of which I do sit as treasurer on. The Cocoa Beach Hotel and Lodging Association, which includes 15 lodging establishments in Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral, recently voted unanimously against the proposal being discussed today. Our member representing Driftwood declined to participate in our discussion or vote. It is our overwhelming belief as collectors of the bed tax that it should not be given to private developers. Further, the constant insertion and reliance on the subjective term transformational will create unintended consequences and wreak havoc throughout the county as it relates to future hotel and resort development and what qualifies for special consideration for bed tax funds. We hope you and the Brevard County Commission will vote against this proposal for the sake of the integrity of TDC bed tax collection and its intended use. That was from Tom Williamson, president of the association. In another board meeting, I also sat on the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association board. It was a topic of conversation that this will set a statewide precedent that could have repercussions throughout the state. And as that association was as well opposed to the 30 years and $1 million a year. I thought last June meeting, the proposal or the motion that Giles gave was a really good suggestion. I thought it was recognizing that they are, it is quote unquote transformational and fair at the same time. It was, I believe it was 7 years rather than 30, which I thought made a whole lot more sense. I think 30 years is ridiculous. Similar to, Julie's comment on opening that box. I mean, if you put something in for 30 years, how many people are going to come after money for 30 years? It's just such a long period of time. I would entertain, though, I would, be for another motion similar to what Giles gave back in June to be able to give them something for bringing up the level of hotels, to 4.5 star. But I do hope the county commission will take the TDC's recommendation. I feel like there's a very strong opinion that the amount of years and the amount of money is just far too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Larry?
Hey guys, this is Larry. Could I have a chance to weigh in?
Please.
Thank you. It was pretty amazing listening to everybody here. And Tom, I definitely appreciate you calling this meeting. I wish I could be there, but we are away on my wife's birthday. This is my first year on the TDC, and I am relatively new to the hotel business, so I am taking a lot of this in and doing my own research and really understanding what would make sense and how things would make sense and trying to look at it in both persons' shoes. Well, three people, the TDC, the county commission, and then, the developer. I think that it is about setting a precedent that is a very dangerous thing. I mean, what I've learned being on the TDC, our board is not designed to grant and the county commission, I think, should think very close and hard before they grant something of this magnitude. I think that Giles' motion in the last meeting, something reasonable for 5 to 7 years, made a lot of sense. I would be in support of that because of the magnitude of this project and how great I think it will be for the area. I also think that retaining the ownership, and the devil's always in the details, and whatever agreement gets done, I think they would need to retain full ownership to be able to keep whatever we did give them. And if they sold the project, no matter how much, it would need to be repaid. And I also have an issue with releasing the money. I think there's a big difference of granting some extra advertising dollars, whatever it is we decided, and having the CDO so specifically and target their market, the higher end market, and possibly more events. I think we all agree that is not a convention center, just more space that is kind of pari pursuit to the square footage of the hotel. So that I think the money should retain with the TDO and not be, actually distributed to the private bench. So that's really my take on this. I think that, like everyone is in agreement that we should possibly do something, but the 30 years just sounds so extreme and so much that it's just such a game changer. And then I would also want to know what Tom mentioned earlier is that legally is doing something like this, changing the bed tax. I forgot what it was called, whether it's the laws or the, whatever they created to make these beds, is doing something this large, actually changing what that is, and does that need a majority +1 from the commission? So,
Thank you, Larry.
that's all, and I really appreciate being able to speak.
You broke up a little there on the end. Could you repeat that?
I was just saying thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. So let me take it in reverse order before we entertain a motion on the main item. Justin, as a board, do we have the, I don't know what you call it, can we pass a motion requiring a written opinion, requesting a written opinion from the county attorney's office as to whether or not, one, this constitutes a change in the bed tax that requires a majority plus one per state statute? Well, I, for one, I think that question is at the crux of this, and I think I heard a majority support for that request, so I'd entertain a motion that this board request of the county attorney's office a written legal opinion relative to state statute as to, one, whether or not this constitutes a change in the use of bed tax, and two, whether or not it requires a majority plus one, and three, which is also being asked now of the county attorney's office, what constitutes a majority plus one on a four-member commission?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Because you certainly can do that, but you have to know that our chair, Christine Zonka, will make sure that that's in line as well. And that's one of the things we have out to Mr. Abate right now. You certainly can do that, but with all responsibility of the county commission, you got to know that's something the county commission is going to make sure happens before we go to vote as well. So it's up to you to whatever you want to do. But I'm just telling you, I've known Commissioner Zonka very well, and I'm sure she's going to have all that together before we get there. And I know Commissioner Tobias the same, and Mr. Abate, I'm sure, is already working on that with Ms. Christie, just so you know.
Well, that's good input. At the very least, then, we'd make the request that we actually get to read said legal opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to move on that motion that you made. I'd like to so move on that motion.
I'll
Call the vote.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the motion that I reiterated, which seems to be in the works, but I think it's incumbent upon us to ask for the same. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that a late aye? Thank you. That motion passes. Now, I think everybody has said their piece. I think to really boil it down, which I tend to do, transformational, nice hotel, yes. 30-year grant, egregious, absurd, extreme, and corporate welfare. Somewhat what this boils down to. So with that, we'll entertain a motion as to what to grant this project out of the TDC, if anything at all.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to have public discussion on this before we make a motion.
At your suggestion, we will welcome public comment before we vote on the item. Mr. Bacher.
Bob Bacher, Cookie Surf Company.
Could you push the green button, Bob?
On the mic, face of the mic.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I think the board has laid out everything that should be discussed. I wanted to make some additional comments. First of all, our TDC does not operate in a vacuum. What do I mean by that? We compete against the other markets in Florida. So we have traditionally done quite well. We have slipped during the pandemic, but we've been in the top 3 performers for our type of market for a long time, and now that we slipped. So what will this do to us? It will dilute our future marketing money, because they're building hotels all over the state, not just in our market. So when they build, their budget will grow with these future revenues, and ours will be diluted by giving it out to different developers. So we do not operate in a vacuum. So we need future growth to be there. So this hurts us. Now, everybody says There's no such thing as a 30-year marketing plan. It's just this is capital being raised under the disguise of marketing. In other words, they will need less money of cash going in. We built 2 hotels during the pandemic. We're getting ready to open it. And how we did it is we put more cash in. We sold other properties. We raised the money. And this is what they need to do. So this is just not, I can go through my balance sheet of expenses, and if you paid my costs, I can build more stuff. This actually finances for me on how I do it, a 150-unit hotel for 20 years, not 30. So this is a partnership. Now, my question is, if this is a partnership, who's getting the profit? Well, we're getting the expense, and the profit's going the other way. Now, hottest market in Florida is the Cape Canaveral Cocoa Beach market before the pandemic. That's the hottest. How do I know that? I get a phone call 1, 2, sometimes 5 times a week to sell assets I have in this market. Now, where are the development? Right now in Cape Canaveral, there are 2 shovel-ready projects that are 150 units each, and 5 more being planned. 5 more. Okay, I'm planning 3. Let me tell you about my plans, because if you're giving away money, I like free money too, okay? I put together 26.5 acres, twice the size of this project. I have now developed half of it. I am planning a 12-acre development that has 450 units, 1,000 parking spaces, larger convention center, and when I'm done, the whole project will be twice the size of what you guys are want to finance. Now, how am I doing it? I'm phase developing it. Why do I do that? Because it's less risk. But the impact is no less than this because it's twice the size. Okay? The ones we're opening right now, next year, will generate $800,000 of bed tax. So time this thing gets open, I will have generated, with my new development, $2.5 million of new bed tax. Are you going to give that back to me? Give me half back? Well, what that will do is make me make more money. So anyhow, I went to see all the commissioners, and I appreciate their time. What is so grievous about this deal is not one person in this room has seen the final deal. Now, when I go financing with a bank, there is some negotiations at the last minute to change this or that. But basically, the basic outline does not change 5 days or 11 days or not. So nobody in this room has seen the final deal. So we don't know what anybody's really voting on. Okay, because this deal, and last time I talked to the commissioners, they haven't seen the final deal. It is actually changing as we speak. Okay? So 30 million, we're going to approve or not approve. And then what is the date today? The 7th, and this is on the 19th. So in less than 2 weeks, okay, in the middle of summer vacation, with less people around, we're going to approve this. Okay, now why is this being done this way? Some people are going to make money, big money. Now, if you gave me $1 million a year for 30 years, what would I give you? Right off the top, I'd give you half. Now, I'm not accusing anybody getting a half, but we don't know what in the hell they're giving you. But if, Giles, you give me $1 million a year, I'll give you half. Why? Because it's free money. What the hell? Get a grip on this, guys. This is not good for Brevard County, and I can't understand why we're sitting here voting on it when we don't even know what we're voting on. So I keep going on this, but I will be back here for free money too. Okay? I will actually show you how I spend it. I will actually argue with Peter over on how to market in the goddamn state, okay? We fight over it all the time. But I will actually have a plan, and then you guys will vote. Thank you, Tom. I see you're watching. You're going to kick me out. But no oversight, free money. Sign us all up.
Yes, please.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I was at the last meeting, and it was very concerned to see a very good motion be made and have a commissioner say, let's not take a vote today, and then to see this circumvented, to watch the COC meeting on a zoning meeting, not a regular commission meeting, and to see them, how much support there was among the commissioners. They were rah, rah, rah. This is amazing. But what very much concerned me about that meeting is the misrepresentations made by the developer. Gross misrepresentations. Misrepresentations that this is fantastic for Brevard because this is a convention center that is going to compete with Miami and Orlando. Oh my God. I mean, let's look at Orlando. That's over 2 million square feet of convention space. Miami and Fort Lauderdale, over 1 million. This isn't competing. This is 100,000 square feet. And then I want to read something here. So there has been a legal opinion already been made on supermajority at the 5/5/22 meeting. Commissioner Zonka asked, what is a supermajority when we have a vacancy? The attorney's legal opinion stated on public record, the one provision I'm thinking of is a charter cap. It says supermajority of the board. I think a reasonable interpretation is to start with the definition of what the board is. It's a 5-member board. Even with a vacancy, at that point, it does not change that is a composition of 5 members. So a supermajority would still be 4. Now, there's some interesting things happening with our county attorneys right now, as you know. So I'll be very curious to see if that definition changes. I am definitely not for this project. I hope you take a motion today and represent the people of Brevard County and the taxpayers of Brevard and the other invested stakeholders in Brevard. Because what I see, which is very concerning, is when you look at candidate reports and even some of our elected officials and who donates to their campaigns, and you see the names, Kendall Moore, Robin Fisher, Guy Spearman, lobbyists. And then we wonder why, when they vote, how they vote. Thank you.
Thank you. One additional public comment, Mr. Garvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to compliment you and this council for coming together and having this discussion. It did appear, whether by intent or timing, that this was going to be circumvented, that your council would be circumvented with this issue. And here in the discussion, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your efforts and your attention to this. I think your input is invaluable to the commission. And so I just want to compliment you on coming together and addressing this issue. And whatever you send to the commission, I hope it's well received. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malone.
Yes, Tom, I plan to make a very similar motion to what I made last time, but I just wanted to make a couple of further comments for the commissioner and the audience. We have published several stories about this. We received 14 letters to the editor from people about this proposal, and we published a video 2 weeks ago. We had an unprecedented amount of public comments about this idea. And we laid out all the facts. We explained what a beautiful hotel it will be, et cetera, but the public was outraged by this proposal. Outraged is the best way I could describe it. The business community is against this. the public is against it, your TDC is against it, the hoteliers are against it, and why our county commission would even consider it, again, it really is a head scratcher. Nothing's to say that they can't come back in 5 years and request additional help. So why don't we make a motion for 5 to 7 years and let them come back if they need additional support then? But why make a 30-year commitment? So those are my further comments. Tom, I'd prepare to make a motion.
Please.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion that the Tourism Development Council sends an idea to the County Commission for $500,000 for 7 years. That's $3.5 million in support, with the proviso that if any ownership of the property is sold, transferred in any way, and there should be a lot of legalese around that part, that it would stop immediately and there'd be no further support. And that the Office of Tourism staff are the ones who writes the checks for the marketing money. So it's controlled through the TDO office, working with this with the marketing team from Driftwood. So that's essentially my proposal.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll now call the roll. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Let me clarify the votes. Mr. Jarnes, was that a late aye for the motion?
Yes, it was an aye. Aye.
Thank you. So we have council members voting aye and Commissioner Pritchett voting nay. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody, for all of your input. I hope that this meeting as well is watched by the county commissioners that will be voting on this issue, and they take to heart our sincere concern about the size and duration of this grant to a private entity, and I'll just quickly finish, and that there is apparently widespread opposition to the proposal as it currently stands. Commissioner Pritchett.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment. You guys all know this. I really appreciate the county commissioners. We typically come together and we have good conversations. We don't make emotional decisions. So we are going to gather all this data and come to a good conclusion. I just want you to know we do not make votes based on who gave us what funds, because you guys gave us quite a few when we ran too. So those decisions were pretty good about making from going through our ideas, what we have going on. None of us are running for office. So I'm looking forward to what the county commission comes back with and what we decide with all the data gathered. But I want to let you guys know I've served with them a long time, and I know they're going to gather information and make a good decision, and I trust the decision that the commission comes back with. Thank you for all your time, and thank you for all of your input, and thank you for having your businesses in Brevard County, and it's good to be able to work with y'all.
Yeah, I failed. I should have addressed that public comment. I hear that at city commission meetings and at county commission meetings, and I should have used the gavel. I'm not quick enough to use it. I think the notion that county commissioners that spend hundreds of hours serving the community, as well as city council members that serve untold hours for peanuts, that they would be swayed in any way by a $250 check every 4 years when they run is completely false and an insult to those that choose to take large parts of their lives to serve the public. So I will gavel any comment like that next time if it's made at this meeting, and I'm glad you raised the issue, and I'm glad I got to say that. So we certainly thank you for your service, all the things that you've done for the county and your constituents over all these years. So we have a final comment from from Mr. Winston.
I'm sorry, I thought I might end this on a lighter note. I just realized I brought my Jets cup today. I'm a Jets and Mets fan. There's a horrible tradition of rooting for bad teams.
Use the gavel, Mr. Chairman.
But I did just want to make this note. We do have a precedent in Mets world for this. In case you don't know it, the Mets made a deal with a player, Bobby Bonilla, many years ago. And he played 1 or 2 seasons, and they have been paying him $1.2 million for 24 years. Every July 1st is now known as Bobby Bonilla Day, and they are generally ridiculed for making a deal that paid $1.2 million into the future. So I do think that is an important precedent for us to think about. At the time, they thought they were spreading out the risk, but in essence, every year they're reminded of a bad deal. Now they make it a holiday, but for many years it was a day of shame for Mets fans. So I just thought it was a lighter note. That's something for us to think about. What is this precedent going into the future? How will it play in 24 years? So.
That's a very good point. On that, unless there's any other comments by any member of the council, we will adjourn. Thank you.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.